My friend discovered my rich husband's affair and demanded I leave him, so I got her fired for interfering. She told my daughter the truth. My daughter went no contact. I chose the money over them both. My daughter's last message to me was 11 words. I don't want a mother who chooses a lifestyle over her soul. She sent it 9 months ago. I've read it every single day since. Not because I'm looking for hidden meaning. There's no hidden meaning. It says exactly what it says. She saw what I am. She named it. And she left. My best friend of 19 years is gone too. Not dead. Just gone. Erased from my life by my own hands because she tried to save me from a marriage I didn't want to be saved from. Not because I loved my husband. Because I loved his money. And I need to say that plainly, without softening it, without wrapping it in the language of security or stability or thinking about my future, because those are the words I used for years to hide the truth from myself. The truth is simpler and uglier. I chose wealth over the 2 people who actually loved me. And now I live in a 5-bedroom house with a man who sleeps with other women, and I eat dinner alone at a table that seats 12, and the silence in this house is so thick I can hear my own heartbeat. This is my confession. Not my defense. I don't have one. My name is Janine. I'm 47. My husband's name is Richard. He's 53. We've been married for 22 years. He owns a commercial real estate company that generates the kind of income most people think only exists on television. We live in a house with a pool, a 3-car garage, a wine cellar, and a view of a lake that looks like a painting. We take vacations to places with white sand and private cabanas. I drive a car that costs more than most people's annual salary. My closet is organized by designer. My bathroom has heated floors. From the outside, my life looks like something you'd pin on a vision board. From the inside, it's a gilded cage and I locked myself in it willingly and threw the key at the feet of a man who stopped loving me sometime around year 8. Richard's affairs started, or at least the ones I know about started, 14 years ago. I was 33. Our daughter, Rihanna, was 8. I found a receipt in his jacket pocket for a hotel room on a Tuesday afternoon. He didn't travel on Tuesdays. I held that receipt in my hand for about 15 minutes, standing in our walk-in closet, and I ran every scenario. Confront him. Hire a pie. Call a lawyer. Leave. Start over. And then I ran the other scenarios. The ones where I stayed. The ones where I pretended I hadn't found it. The ones where I slid the receipt back into his pocket and zipped the jacket and hung it up and went downstairs and poured a glass of wine and told myself it was nothing. And that's the one I chose. Not because I was weak. Because I was calculating. I looked around that closet, at the clothes and the shoes and the bags and the life those things represented, and I did the math. The math said staying was worth more than leaving. So I stayed. And I've been doing that math every day for 14 years. And every day, the answer has been the same. Until now. Because now the cost of staying isn't measured in money. It's measured in people. And the account is empty. My best friend's name was Rochelle. Was. I can't call her my friend anymore because I forfeited that right when I had her fired from a job she'd held for 9 years. But I'll get to that. Rochelle and I met in our late 20s at a Mommy and Me music class. Our daughters were a year apart. Brianna and Rochelle's daughter, Imani, grew up together. Playdates, birthday parties, sleepovers, first days of school. Rochelle was a social worker at a community health center. She didn't make a lot of money. She drove a 12-year-old Honda. She lived in a 2-bedroom apartment that she kept immaculate because she had too much pride to let anyone see struggle in her space. She was the most honest person I've ever known. Not honest in the polite way. Honest in the way that made you uncomfortable because she said the thing nobody else would say and she said it to your face. I loved her for that. Right up until she said it about my husband. Then I destroyed her for it. Rochelle had suspected Richard for years. She never said anything directly, but she dropped comments. Richard's traveling a lot lately. He seems distracted at dinner. Are you two okay? You seem different. I deflected every time. He's busy with work. We're fine. You worry too much. She accepted my deflections because she trusted me. She thought I was in the dark. She didn't know I was standing in the dark on purpose, with my eyes closed, choosing not to see what was right in front of me because the view from inside the dark was a 5-bedroom house and a wine cellar and heated bathroom floors. The breaking point came 18 months ago. Rochelle was at a restaurant downtown with a coworker. She saw Richard. Richard was at a corner table with a woman who was not me. They were not having a business dinner. Rochelle described it to me later, his hand on her thigh, her leaning into him, the way they looked at each other. Like they'd been doing this for a long time, Rochelle said. She took a photo on her phone. Discreetly. She didn't confront Richard. She came to me the next day, sat at my kitchen island, slid her phone across the counter, and said, "Jan, I need to show you something." I looked at the photo. Richard and a woman. Brunette. Younger. His hand on her leg. The restaurant I recognized because we'd celebrated our anniversary there 2 years prior. I looked at it for about 10 seconds. Then I slid the phone back and said, "Don't worry about it." Rochelle stared at me. She said, "Don't worry about it?" "Janine, your husband is cheating on you," I said. "I know." The 2 words landed between us like a dropped glass. She said, "You know?" I said, "I've known for a long time." She said, "And you're staying?" I said, "It's complicated." She said, "No, it isn't. He's cheating. You leave. You take him to court. You get what you're owed. That's not complicated. That's basic." Basic. She called it basic. And she was right. For a woman with self-respect, for a woman who valued herself more than she valued a house and a car and a lifestyle, leaving would have been basic. But I wasn't that woman. I hadn't been that woman for 14 years. I was the woman who did the math. And the math, even now, even with a photo on a phone screen, said stay. Because leaving Richard meant lawyers and courts and asset division and the possibility, the real possibility, that I'd walk away with less than I had. Prenup. His lawyers. His money. His ability to drag a divorce out for years while I hemorrhaged legal fees. I'd seen it happen to other women in our social circle. The wife who left with half of nothing because his assets were structured through LLCs and trusts and offshore accounts that no forensic accountant could fully unravel. I'd watched those women go from poolside to studio apartments, and I'd sworn to myself that wouldn't be me. So I stayed. I stayed with a man who didn't love me because leaving him might mean being poor. And I called it complicated. Rochelle didn't accept my answer. She pushed. Over the next 2 weeks, she pushed hard. She called me every day. She sent me articles about financial planning for divorce. She sent me the names of lawyers who specialized in high asset separations. She sent me the number for a domestic financial planning advisor. She wasn't being nosy. She was being a friend. The best kind of friend. The kind who sees you drowning and throws you a rope even when you keep telling them you're fine. She wasn't interfering. She was trying to save me. And I punished her for it. The thing about Rochelle is she wasn't just my friend. She worked at a community health center that received partial funding from a foundation connected to Richard's company. Not a direct connection. But close enough. Richard sat on the board of a nonprofit that allocated grants to several community organizations, including the one that partially funded Rochelle's clinic. I knew this. Rochelle knew this. It had never been relevant before. It became relevant when I decided to use it. I want to describe what I did next in exact detail because I want you to see it clearly. I want you to see the calculation. The steps. The deliberate, methodical cruelty of a woman who chose her lifestyle over her best friend and did it with the efficiency of someone ordering curtains online. I told Richard about Rochelle's campaign to break up our marriage. I framed it as interference. I said, "Rochelle has been pressuring me to leave you. She's been calling every day. She's been sending me lawyers' names. She's obsessed with our marriage." I didn't mention the photo. I didn't mention the affairs. I presented Rochelle as a jealous, overstepping friend who was trying to destroy a happy marriage because she couldn't stand seeing me have something she didn't. Richard listened. He didn't ask questions. He didn't ask why Rochelle might think there was a problem. He just nodded and said, "I'll handle it." He handled it. Within 3 weeks, the grant that partially funded Rochelle's clinic was flagged for review. The review resulted in a reallocation of funds that effectively gutted the clinic's budget. Rochelle's position, along with 2 others, was eliminated due to restructuring. She was given 2 weeks' notice and a severance package that amounted to about 3 months' salary. She'd worked there for 9 years. 9 years of serving families, of doing intake evaluations, of sitting with people in crisis, of doing the hard, unglamorous, underpaid work that holds communities together. And it was gone. Because she tried to help me. Because she told me the truth. Because I turned her act of love into a weapon and handed it to the man she was trying to save me from. Rochelle called me the day she was let go. She was calm. Eerily calm. She said, "Was this you?" I said nothing. She said, "Janine. Was this you and Richard?" I said, "I don't know what you're talking about." She said, "Don't lie to me. The grant review happened 3 weeks after I showed you that photo. Richard sits on the board." "I'm not stupid," I said. "Rochelle, I think you're connecting things that aren't connected." She said, "I've known you for 19 years. I can hear you lying." I said nothing. She said, "You did this. You let him do this. Because I tried to help you. Because I loved you enough to tell you the truth." I said, "I think you need to focus on finding a new job instead of blaming me for your funding issues." The line went quiet. Then she said, In a voice I had never heard from her, a voice that was beyond anger, beyond hurt, somewhere in the territory of final. I hope the house is worth it, Janine. She hung up. That was the last time Rochelle spoke to me. But it wasn't the last thing she did. Rochelle and my daughter Brianna had always been close. Brianna called her Aunt Ro. They texted. They got coffee when Brianna was home from college. They had a relationship that existed independent of me, a relationship I'd always been grateful for because Rochelle was the kind of woman I wanted my daughter to admire. Honest. Principled. Strong. Everything I was not. 6 weeks after Rochelle was fired, Brianna came home for a weekend visit. She was 22, in her last year of college. She walked through the front door and something was different. She didn't hug me at the door the way she usually did. She set her bag down and she looked at me with an expression I'd never seen on her face before. Not anger. Assessment. She was assessing me. Like she was seeing me for the first time and trying to decide what she was looking at. We got through dinner. Richard was there, charming as always, asking about her classes, her plans after graduation. Brianna answered politely but briefly. After dinner, Richard went to his office. Brianna and I were alone in the kitchen. She sat at the island. The same island where Rochelle had slid her phone across the counter. Brianna looked at me and said, "Mom, I need to ask you something. And I need you to tell me the truth." My stomach dropped. I knew. Before she said another word, I knew. Is Dad having affairs? I could have lied. I almost did. The lie was right there, on my tongue, ready to deploy. No, honey, of course not. 7 words that would have preserved the surface for a little longer. But Brianna was looking at me the way Rochelle used to look at me. With that unflinching honesty that demands honesty in return. So I said, yes. She nodded. Like she already knew. Because she did. Rochelle had told her. Not to be vindictive. Not to punish me. Because Brianna had called Rochelle to ask why they weren't coming to Christmas anymore, and Rochelle, being Rochelle, didn't lie to a young woman who deserved the truth. Brianna said, "How long have you known?" I said, "A long time." She said, "How long?" I said, "Years." She closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet. She said, "Aunt Ro tried to help you. And you got her fired." I said, "It wasn't that simple." She said, "Yes it was. She showed you proof. She tried to get you out. And you used Dad's connections to take her job because she wouldn't shut up about it." I said, "Brianna, you don't understand the full picture." She said, "I understand it perfectly. You chose this house over your best friend. You chose Dad's money over the truth. And you choose it over me too." I said, "That's not fair." She said, "Were you ever going to tell me?" I had no answer. Because the answer was no. I was never going to tell her. I was going to maintain the surface until I died. I was going to let Brianna grow up believing her parents had a normal marriage, collect her inheritance, and never know that her mother had sold her integrity for heated floors and a lake view. I was going to pass the lie down like a family heirloom. Brianna left the next morning. She didn't slam a door. She didn't yell. She packed her bag, walked to the front door, and turned around. She said, "I love you, Mom. But I don't respect you. And I can't be in this house pretending everything is fine when you've been pretending for my entire life." She left. She drove back to campus. And 3 days later, she sent me the message. "I don't want a mother who chooses a lifestyle over her soul." 11 words. The most honest sentence anyone has ever said to me. More honest than anything I've said in 22 years. The morning after Brianna sent that message, I sat at the kitchen island with my coffee and I stared at my phone and I waited. I waited for the follow-up text that said I didn't mean it or I was upset or can we talk? It didn't come. Not that morning. Not that week. Not that month. Brianna meant every word. And the realization that my daughter was capable of cutting me off with the same clean finality that I'd used to cut off Rochelle was, I think, the first moment I truly understood what I'd become. I taught her clarity. I just hadn't expected her to use it on me. I tried calling. 3 times in the first week. She didn't answer. I texted. Long messages. Careful messages. The kind of messages a woman writes and rewrites for hours, trying to find the combination of words that will unlock a closed door. "Brianna, I understand you're hurt. I want to explain. Please let me explain. I know things look bad from the outside, but there's context you don't have. I'm your mother. I love you. Nothing changes that." Each message was read. None was answered. She'd learned silence from me. I'd spent years being silent about Richard's affairs. I'd been silent when Rochelle asked for honesty. I'd been silent when my daughter deserved the truth. And now Brianna was showing me exactly what my own silence felt like from the other side. Richard didn't notice Brianna's absence for almost 2 weeks. That tells you everything you need to know about our family. Our daughter stopped coming home, stopped calling, stopped texting, and her father didn't register it for 14 days. When he finally asked, "Has Bri been busy?" "Haven't heard from her," I said. "She's focused on school," he said. "Good," and went back to his phone. He didn't follow up. He didn't call her. He didn't wonder. Brianna was an item on a checklist for Richard, and as long as the box was vaguely checked, he moved on. I used to resent that about him. Now I realize I have no right to. I treated Brianna the same way. Not as a person to be honest with. As an audience member who needed to keep believing the show was real. Let me tell you about what happened to Rochelle, because she's the person in this story who deserved the least damage and absorbed the most. After losing her job, Rochelle spent 4 months unemployed. 4 months. For a social worker with 9 years of experience, that's not normal. The community health sector in our area is small. People talk. When a clinic loses funding and positions are cut, there's always speculation about why. Rochelle told me once, years before all this, that reputation in social work is everything. You lose trust in this field, you lose work. She didn't lose trust because she did anything wrong. She lost it because the funding cut raised questions, and questions in a small professional community become rumors, and rumors become a stain that's almost impossible to scrub out. She eventually found work at a nonprofit in a different county. Longer commute. Lower pay. Starting over at 45 because her best friend fed her to the machine to protect a marriage that wasn't even real. Imani, Rochelle's daughter, was Brianna's closest friend since childhood. They'd grown up together. Shared everything. After everything happened, Brianna and Imani got closer. I know this because I can see the edges of their relationship on social media. Photos together. Comments on each other's posts. Brianna spent Thanksgiving with Rochelle's family last year. I saw the photo. Brianna at Rochelle's table. Smiling. Laughing. Surrounded by the warmth of a family that doesn't have heated floors or a wine cellar but has something I gave away a long time ago, honesty. My daughter chose Rochelle's dinner table over mine. And she was right too. Because Rochelle's table doesn't have a liar sitting at the head of it. I need to talk about the money. Because people are going to read this and say, just leave him. Take half. Start over. And I need to explain why I didn't. Not to justify it. To expose the prison I built around myself so that other women can see the bars before they walk in. Richard's wealth is structured to be nearly untouchable in a divorce. I knew this before I married him. I signed a prenup at 25 because I was young and in love, and a man with that kind of money doesn't marry without one. The prenup entitles me to the house, a fixed alimony for 10 years, and a lump settlement that sounds large until you compare it to what he keeps. His business assets, his investment portfolio, his properties, his trusts, none of that is on the table. If I left tomorrow, I would walk away with a house I can't afford to maintain on my own, alimony that expires, and a settlement that would sustain a comfortable middle-class life for about 8 to 10 years if I managed it carefully. After that, I'd be on my own. At 47. With no career. No work history for 2 decades. No professional network. No skills that translate to the job market. I would go from this life to a life that looks nothing like it. And every time I've stood at that threshold, every time I've looked at the numbers and imagined the fall, I've stepped back. I've stayed. Because the fall terrified me more than the cage. I know how that sounds. I know it sounds pathetic. A woman choosing money over her daughter, her best friend, her own dignity, because she's afraid of being middle class. But fear doesn't always look like cowardice from the inside. From the inside, it looks like logic. It looks like I'm being practical. It looks like I'm too old to start over. It looks like at least I have security. These are the lies I tell myself every morning when I wake up in this house and Richard is already gone and the coffee maker is the only thing that greets me. The loneliness. Let me talk about the loneliness because it's the thing the money can't fix, and it's the thing that's finally killing me. I have no friends. Not real ones. After Rochelle, my social circle contracted to the women in Richard's orbit. Wives of his business partners. Women who lunch and shop and attend charity galas and never, under any circumstances, discuss anything real. Women who know their husbands cheat and who have made the same calculation I made and who maintain the surface with the same desperate discipline. We smile at each other across tables and we talk about renovations and vacations and children's achievements, and none of us ever says the truth, which is that we are alone in rooms full of people and the only thing holding us together is the thread count of our sheets. I tried to reach Rochelle once. 5 months after she was fired. I sent her a letter. Handwritten. I said I was sorry. I said I knew what I'd done was wrong. I said I missed her. I asked if we could talk. She didn't respond. A week later, I got the letter back in the mail. Unopened. She'd written on the envelope, in her handwriting, 3 words, "Enjoy your house." I held that envelope in my hands and I felt the full weight of every decision I'd made in the last 14 years land on my chest at once. She didn't even open it. She didn't care what I had to say. And why would she? I'd taken her honesty and weaponized it. I'd taken her loyalty and punished it. I'd taken 19 years of real friendship and traded it for the continued comfort of a man who doesn't even eat dinner with me. Brianna graduated from college 3 months ago. I found out from her Instagram. I wasn't invited. I wasn't told. She posted a photo in her cap and gown with Rochelle and Imani on either side of her. The caption said, "My village. 3 women. Smiling. None of them me." My daughter graduated from college and her village was the woman I destroyed and the daughter of the woman I destroyed. I stared at that photo until the screen blurred. Then I put my phone in a drawer. I didn't touch it for 2 days. Richard, through all of this, is unchanged. He comes home when he feels like it. He leaves when he feels like it. He's polite to me in the way that a hotel guest is polite to the concierge. Our conversations are logistical. The gardener is coming Thursday. I'll be in Atlanta this weekend. Did you call the roofer? We are 2 strangers sharing an address and a last name and nothing else. He hasn't touched me in over a year. He doesn't pretend to want to. I don't pretend to care. We've reached the terminal stage of this arrangement, the stage where the performance has dropped entirely and all that's left is the contract. I stay. He provides. Neither of us acknowledges what we've lost because we lost it so long ago that the grief has calcified into something that doesn't even feel like grief anymore. It feels like furniture. Heavy. Permanent. In the way. I see a therapist. I started 4 months ago, after Brianna's no contact held firm and I realized it wasn't going to crack. My therapist asked me, during our second session, "What are you afraid of?" I said, "Being poor." She said, "You were poor before Richard. Were you unhappy?" I said, "No." She said, "So what you're really afraid of isn't poverty. It's change." She was right. I'm not afraid of a smaller house or a cheaper car or a life without a wine cellar. I'm afraid of the woman I'd have to become to live that life. A woman who works. A woman who struggles. A woman who has to rebuild an identity that isn't attached to a man's bank account. I've been Janine, Richard's wife, for 22 years. Without that title, I don't know who I am. And at 47, the prospect of finding out is more terrifying than staying in a marriage that's been dead for over a decade. But the walls are closing in. That's the thing about choosing money over people. Money doesn't call you on your birthday. Money doesn't sit with you when you can't sleep. Money doesn't look at you with Brianna's eyes and say, "I'm proud of you, Mom." Money doesn't tell you the truth when you need to hear it. Money doesn't drive a 12-year-old Honda and show up at your door with a photo on a phone because she loves you too much to let you keep living a lie. Money sits in accounts and buys things and maintains surfaces, and when the surfaces are all you have, you realize, too late, that you've been decorating a coffin. People will read this and say, "Just leave." People will say, "It's not too late." People will say, "Call Brianna. Call Rochelle. Start over." And maybe they're right. Maybe there's a version of this where I file for divorce, take the settlement, sell the house, get a job, move to a small apartment, and call my daughter from a kitchen that doesn't have heated floors but has something better, a mother who finally chose correctly. Maybe that version exists. I think about it every night. I think about it when I'm sitting at the 12-seat table eating dinner alone. I think about it when I walk past the guest room where Brianna used to sleep when she visited, and the bed is still made because nobody visits anymore. I think about it when I see the spot on the kitchen island where Rochelle slid her phone across the counter and tried to save me. But thinking and doing are different muscles. And mine have atrophied from 22 years of disuse. I am 47 years old. I live in a house that could be in a magazine. I have a closet organized by designer. I have a car that turns heads. I have a husband who provides everything except presence, fidelity, and love. I have a wine cellar that I sit in sometimes, alone, at 11 p.m., drinking something that costs more per bottle than Rochelle makes in a day at her new job. And I have a phone that doesn't ring. A daughter who doesn't visit. A best friend who returned my letter unopened with 3 words on the envelope that I deserve. Enjoy your house. I'm trying, Rochelle. But houses don't hug you back. And the echo in these rooms gets louder every year. And the lake view doesn't change. And the heated floors are warm under my feet but cold everywhere else. And I chose this. Every day for 14 years, I chose this. Not because someone made me. Because I did the math. And the math said stay. The math was wrong. The math was always wrong. I just couldn't see it because I was counting the wrong things. I counted square footage when I should have been counting the people who loved me. And now the people are gone. And the square footage is all that's left. 5 bedrooms. Zero people who want to be in them. That's not a home. That's a monument to every wrong choice I've ever made. And I live in it. Every day. Alone. With the man I sold my life to and the silence that replaced everything I threw away.